subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hi, welcome to Economics. We are just 2 days away from the 8th union budget of the NDA government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And it is probably going to be also the most critical or significant budgets among all the 8 that have been presented so far. Budgets, they say, are merely accounting and budgeting exercises, and India makes a big deal of the budget and the media is blamed for that. But this budget is not one of those. Ila says this is the time for the Modi government and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to make policy changes, financial sector regulatory reforms, tax policy reforms, and set the tone for India opening capital inflows. We'll ask Ila why. Hi Ila. So why do you say that this is not merely just another accounting exercise or just another union budget?
See, the budget is being made in a particular macroeconomic environment where, growth has slipped, inflation has risen, private investment has gone down and unemployment has gone up. The only healthy thing at the moment is the balance of payments. But for the rest, everything is under stress. Now, normally what a budget can do is to provide maybe a fiscal stimulus. We've already provided monetary stimuli, and there isn't a lot of scope for more monetary easing. The transmission mechanism needs to be improved there. But for the fisc, the difficulty is that we already have a higher fiscal deficit. The CAG said that the fiscal deficit was last year perhaps 2% more than what the government said, and questions have been raised about the transparency of those numbers. You don't really want to go down a path where you might become unsustainable on the path. The public debt might become unsustainable. So what you want to do instead is to encourage private investment, restore investor confidence by doing things like simplification of the tax regime, opening up more to foreign capital, by making regulations easier for people to be able to invest, also making them feel that policies will not change very soon. So if you cut corporate tax rates, it's not that you're going to raise them very soon tomorrow. So you have to have that shift or change in the mindset of investors, because that seems to be the only thing that you can now do to revive the economy. We are seeing some signs of revival, but they can easily go away if one were to turn around and say give more powers to tax officials, raise tax rates, rather than make things simpler and more attractive.
You've talked about the need to expand demand and what steps the finance minister can take to expand demand. But at the same time, you also made a very strong point that expansionary fiscal or monetary policies are not ideal instruments at the present time. So what does that leave the government with?
See, first, the biggest concern is that if you do expansionary fiscal, and I do feel that when the economy is down, this is the time to do counter-cyclical fiscal policy. So you should be doing expansionary fiscal, but we can't really even talk about it till we know what the numbers are. We don't know what the GDP numbers are, we don't know what the fiscal numbers are. So Finance Minister has to very, I think, boldly come out and give us a true picture of GDP, of the fisc, of the off-budget borrowing, of delayed payments, of all the things that make people a little jittery about buying government bonds, of lending to government. So that's the first thing, that why normally fiscal policy should be a good instrument, should be counter-cyclical policy, counter-cyclical macro policy, and where we've done monetary, we should also be doing fiscal easing. But when everybody is so worried about the numbers that you're putting out, it really is not a very good instrument.
But what, Ila, if the truth hurts, if the real numbers are so scary that it will make people even more jittery and shake confidence of investors, market players?
See, the thing you can do then is to, it's a difficult situation. So the thing you could try to do then is to convey to investors and to the public at large your commitment to a fiscal deficit. You can, or to fiscal prudence, that you're not going to just be going off the track. So you could do things like setting up a fiscal council. You could do bond market reforms, because at the end of the day, it is the market which should signal when a government is borrowing too much. And today we have not allowed the market to give those signals, because we have this statutory liquidity ratio. We force public sector banks, financial institutions, LIC, PPF and so on to buy government bonds. So it's a captive market, and only if you, along with the bad numbers, only if you can kind of make that commitment and persuade people that you are not hiding bad news, I think that then markets may become less jittery.
The point you're making there is that, instead of give credible numbers and then talk about simplifying the tax and regulatory regime, that those are the legislative changes you are recommending, because that will restore some amount of confidence and get people to do business more easily.
Right. So the question really is, if you want investment to expand, there is limited scope for government investment to expand. All economists like to say, all of us like to say, government should invest in public investment. There should be public investment. Particularly, government should invest in infrastructure. We all like to say that. But the question comes, where is the money? And if the money is not there, and if you're going to still get maybe 1% increase, a 2% increase, you're not going to be able to do the kind of increase that would compensate for the decline in private investment that we are seeing. So the question is, how do you get private investment up? And it's not just anymore the cost of capital, because we've done adequate monetary easing. It's not just corporate tax rates. You've tried to do some, though of course I believe the corporate tax rates need to be cut uniformly, not what was done for just a few partial. But that apart, it's not the corporate tax rate as such, but it is the environment. It is the policy environment that has rattled people. And part of what happened, I think in the 17 budget, we gave more powers to tax officials. So, they could interpret rules in certain ways. They could do search and seizure raids without permission that were earlier required. So the checks and balances became less, and people have become very, very wary. Investors have become very, very wary of the policy regime. So that is why the question is, if we want to increase demand and if we want to increase investment, and if our hands are tied because there's limited fiscal space, because there is limited monetary easing space now given the level of inflation and the steps already taken, what are the kind of things that the government can do so that the private sector invests more? And that's why I'm saying that there are reforms that are on the table that have been discussed. Nothing, no magic pills, nothing really out of the box, no silver, just simple things that have been understood, and moving slowly on those, setting up those institutions, doing those reforms.
And you're very clear that there should be no further tax rate increases, make it less intrusive and a rational tax policy.
Absolutely. So don't make the mistake of increasing tax rates because your tax collections have fallen short, receipts are low. In fact, what you end up doing then is hitting GDP, and you reduce the base, and you
hitting investor confidence also.
Hitting investor confidence, and you actually may collect less. So tax rate increases are not going to give us more tax collections. So I think the FM needs to be very wary of suggestions if she's receiving any from, particularly from tax administrators who are given targets to chase. So, we need to bring down our nominal GDP growth projections, media reports say that this time they are more realistic, they are at 7.5 or so. So if those come down, then tax projections come down, and maybe that along with a regime that is more checks and balances, less arbitrariness, less power with tax officials, do more data analytics rather than raid people. So that's the kind of change that might help.
Thanks, Sheila. We'll know in less than 2 days how careful, how practical, how generous the finance minister will be or has been this time. Thanks for watching this episode. We'll come back to you on Saturday afternoon with another special edition of Economics. Please do watch us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.